email address like this, you can see, and there's a 4 attribute inside that label. I'll show you how to use that. First we need an ID for input, so we have to give an unique ID. The ID is unique. I'm gonna give it as email and enter this ID inside this for tag. Okay, now when I click this email tag, email label, it's going to focus me into this input field. Okay, now you see it's focused me into that input field. I recommend you to use a for tag because it will be much useful for mobile users. When they tap on this tag, it will focus them to this input field. I'm going to give this form a class and try to give some unique class name and meaningful class name, so later we can use it as a mini framework like Bootstrap, so we can easily style up our form just entering the class, and the predefined style will be applied to that. Okay, so I'm going to give it as, so I'm gonna give my first name H, first name's first letter H, and form H form, and I'm also going to give a class to this label class, and I'm going to give this as H label, and also I'm going to give this input field a class of H input. Okay, now let's add a submit button, so when the user clicks it, it has to submit all the data to the server side language. Okay, to create a submit button, you can just type input. Okay, now what you have to do is to make, and now you see it's an input field, right? By default, even if you take this off, by default the input is text, input type is text. Okay, let me set the type to you can see there are multiple types: button, checkbox, color, date, and some of them are HTML5 types, so weak, URL, text, and I'm going to choose submit, and you can see a submit buttons appear on the screen. Okay, now let me change that value. To change that value, you have to type value, and I'm going to say subscribe. Now okay, now we created our first simple subscription form. Okay, now it's time to design it. So before that, let me give this submit button a class. I'm going to give it as h-btn. Okay, now it's time to open up the style sheet.